Good morning, everybody. So the cattle grazed last night for the first time behind this temporary electric fence installation. So I'm training them now within this fenced pasture to be able to respect the temporary electric fence. So it's just one strand of poly wire. Those of you that don't know, it's a system that runs in those buckets there, which are my rainproof device. I'll show you some other time. There's a energizer, a Gallagher energizer, and a little motorbike battery, 12-volt battery. And this, through some magic tech, sends a 9,000 volt electric pulse through this poly wire. Careful, Nakia, you're gonna get hurt. I told you. Yes. Come, out here. Yeah. The dogs are still learning to respect the fence. They are a bit slower than the cattle at learning. The cattle seem to put their nose onto it once or twice, and then they've learnt it. The dogs seem not to want to learn so quickly. Tanky burnt himself on it this morning. When I say burnt himself, I've been shocked by the wire accidentally once or twice. It's a very sharp, very instantaneous pain, but it's not something that is lasting or damaging. It's just gives you a big fright. So Nakia's on the couch now, I'm sure, licking her wounds and her pride, but I did tell her this morning. Why is electric fence so important? Because it allows us very cheaply, very efficiently, very effectively to move the cattle around the farm and control where we want them to graze. If we just allow the cattle to wander randomly all over the show, they never do the work of bringing any grazing down at any one point and fertilizing at any one point effectively. And also, we never then get to the point where the pasture is allowed to rest, to recover. So now we can move them around, keep them for a few days on a certain piece of ground, and then allow that piece of ground to rest for 2 weeks, 2 months, so that the grass and the vegetation can come back fully before it's grazed again. Because like so many things in the natural environment of which we're part, so many things, grass and pasture, recovers not in a straight line graph, but in a S-curve. So it increases rapidly in its growth after a slow start, and then it slows down toward the S part, the top of the S part of the curve, if you know what I mean. So if you don't allow the pasture to rest in those first few days, after the cattle have been there, the cattle will just keep on nibbling off the growth, and it'll never get that spurt of growth that comes with a bit of rest. So that's why the electric fence is so important to us. And it's also important to us in that it saves significantly on effort and labor required to build permanent fences, and resources. And if you take on the environmental argument, all the resources of harvesting all these fence posts and all this wire from the environment unnecessarily, where it can be dealt with one little strand of poly wire, which is nylon basically threaded through with a aluminium, I think, strand. Very thin, very efficient, very light on the environment. Does it stress the cattle? I saw when I put them in last night that as they touched the wire first, they had a little hop and a skip and then just continued grazing immediately. They don't seem to be stressed by it. And I suppose just in the way that I've been shocked by this wire, and as I'm standing next to it now, I'm not stressed. I've just learnt not to touch it. So I'm assuming I'm proceeding under the assumption that it has a similar impact on the internal stress levels of the cattle. They seem calm to me. So I'm going to keep them behind these fences with the polywire for another few days to be absolutely certain that they're trained to it before I then attempt to release them into the pasture, the wild forest pasture beyond here. Believe me, there's some grasses in there all the way around, and then I'll move them around. We'll see how it goes. I think the trick is to be sure that this wire is always energized to the point where they never once try it and it doesn't shock them. It's got to be energized and alive and vital all the time. So I've been watching some very instructional videos on YouTube of how I can use polywire to keep in the goats that I'd love to keep. You see, I'd love to keep goats because you can see just looking at the pasture there, the cattle ignore a lot of the brush. They will kind of nibble at it, but it's not really their favorite. And they're exactly the opposite to goats. Goats will kind of nibble at the grass, but they love the brush. But the horror stories you hear about goats is that they will escape out of everything. But I saw this very useful video of a guy in Texas, incidentally farming with boer goats, which are a South African breed, very popular in Texas, where he goes to some lengths to explain how to train the goats. They use 2 strands of polywire, not one, but that's also fine. But he goes to some lengths to explain how to train the goats, maybe for a week or so, to learn to respect the wire. And he says once they are trained, they can be kept. So that'll be great, because then I can move the goats all around. You can see up on the hill there even, it's just brush, loads of brush, and through that forest there. It'll be so good for the land, it'll be so good for the goats, and also it'll be so good for the cattle, because as the brush is cleared, the grasses, which need more sunlight, will begin to recover underneath the brush. So I'm very, very excited about experimenting with that, and trying it out. But first, we're going to be proceeding slowly. So first we're going to get these 3 cattle under our control and manage them in a way that we can continue to, before introducing more cattle, before introducing any goats. That's the idea. Anyway, I'm definitely going to keep you all posted on this, but I'm very happy with our experiment so far. I'm going to go off into town today to be sure that I have a second motorbike battery. The one that I had from the quad bike seems to not be taking a charge, so I'm going to need 2 of these at all time. But anyhow, you guys have a lekker day, and I'll keep you posted regarding my progress. Okay, ciao.